The One Piece world is home to all sorts of crazy life forms, from south birds to north birds to east birds, and also the birds from the other direction. But nothing really gives you the full scope of this world until you dive into the deep seas. The One Piece world is home to some of the most terrifying sea monsters in all of media. The reason why sailing in the Grand Line is so dangerous isn't so much because of the Marines or the pirates or the unpredictable weather, it's because at any given moment, you could be eaten by a creature hundreds of times your size, which in and of itself could be eaten by a creature thousands of times your size, and that one can be eaten as well by a creature, look, you get the idea. There's always a bigger fish, culminating in a staggering godlike entity of unknown power. These are the most dangerous sea monsters in One Piece. And we're going to begin off the coast of Alabasta with these happy dugongs. Do not, however, let this hap fool you, as they are trained kung fu dugongs. No sea life in One Piece is to be underestimated. None. In fact, the goofier it looks, the more you should probably stay away from it. A point which is proven perfectly by the Kung Fu Dugongs. Roughly a third as tall as the average human, but born with innate martial arts abilities that surpass any untrained human and also many of those who are trained, and they could be particularly dangerous as they always travel in packs. However, they also live by a strict code of honor, which means they prefer one-on-one fights. Also, once defeated, a Dugong will pledge themselves to the one who bested them. However, despite their battle lust, they're usually quite friendly though. Remembering that the concept of friendly to a Kung Fu Dugong means engaging in consistent violence. The Dugongs populate warmer areas, however within colder climates you are liable to encounter a super penguin. The most famous one in the series is named Camel, which Kuzan uses to travel instead of his bike post time skip. And really they're not too big in the grand scheme of things, but also remember that Kuzan is almost 3 meters tall, so this penguin is still massive compared to your average person. Also, they come with a pretty big warning. Even though they constantly act adorable, they don't like being called cute, and if you do call them cute, then they will pretty seriously mess you up. But even then, super penguins are minuscule compared to what else is out there, such as the voracious fighting fish, which are many times larger than a human and already larger than 99.9% of all living things in reality. Unlike the dugongs, they are both ferocious and willing to work in groups. In fact, it is next to impossible to cross any water inhabited by fighting fish, unless you're some sort of ocean-faring Giga Chad pirate king and or flamingo-being person man. Within their ranks, they also have a quote boss class fighting fish, which, while smaller than average, are far more intelligent and far more deadly. And actually, Old Mate Dellinger is part fighting fish, but specifically a fishman style fighting fish rather than the core breed. The latter of which would be weird because it would imply that a human once mated with a fish. They live primarily around Dressrosa and are said to lack any natural predators. However, this is almost certainly due to their proximity to land, because venturing further out into the sea would certainly put fighting fish back on the menu, boys. For an example of that, I bet that all of you insect haters thought that this video about sea monsters would be safe. Well, you're wrong. Because here is a giant aquatic centipede, and yes, I know that centipedes and millipedes and myriapods, but let's be real, to the people afraid of insects, the exact classification doesn't really matter. There is a bit of discrepancy about their size. I think in the anime they're portrayed as much bigger than the manga. Either way, still massive though. Roughly the same size as a large ship such as the Thousand Sunny. Very little is known about them other than they exist, and that's probably because most people who encounter them don't live to report their results. In fact, from here on out, every creature we encounter has the power to sink a large vessel with ease. Which takes us to the sea beasts, which are probably the most commonly cited aquatic life forms in One Piece, which isn't a good thing. You do not want to see them. A sea beast can be identified quite easily as anything with the prefix sea, followed by an animal that does not belong in the sea, such as a sea rabbit, sea lion, sea bear, sea hippo, which I guess hippos do kind of belong in water, but not this much water. And of course sea cows like Momu, who we actually have an oddly detailed biology of. And if we zoom in on the stomach, you can see the bones of lesser sea life, such as sharks and even small whales. Also, sea cows in particular have a superior digestive system, making them immune to poisons, thus granting them a practically omnivorous lifestyle. These creatures are colossal in nature. A sea cow, for example, is 36 meters tall and weighs a whopping 16 tons. And a lot of general sea beasts take on the characteristics of their fusion creature, meaning that some are hyper-aggressive, whilst others are just devastatingly playful. That's the basic level of sea beast anyway. If you make it far enough into the New World, then you may even encounter sea beast weapons. These are augmented, weaponized sea beasts under the control of Dr. Vegapunk and employed primarily to guard Egghead Island. Most of them are the same size as regular sea beasts. However, amongst their ranks is a particularly fearsome creature known as the mecha shark, big enough to comfortably comfortably swallow large ships, and even the large Vegaforce mecha looks quite humble compared to it. The point is though, in One Piece you can't just worry about sea beasts. You've also got to worry about cyborg sea beasts and also zombies. Taking a huge step up is Oars, and he's a bit of a rarity here because ancient giants, no, they're not technically sea monsters, but we do have to make an exception for Oars, because he was known as Oars the Continent Puller, clocking in at 67 meters tall and weighing 102 tons. So he did spend quite a lot of time in the sea pulling those there continents, even though continents don't exist in the One Piece world apart from the Red Line, but who knows, maybe that's because Oars pulled them all apart. Back in his day though, you would definitely rather run into a more standard sea monster than Oars. Allegedly, he was a barbaric warrior who created a nation of villains, so realistically you would probably have a better chance of surviving against a sea beast. I think a lot of people are shocked to discover that Oars is only 67 meters tall, not because that isn't absolutely massive, but because even that is nothing compared to the truly big sea life. As an example, here's a Kraken, a very classic sea monster that dwarfs anything we've discussed so far, carrying an average width of 300 meters. The primary one we've seen in the series is Surame, and that's for good reason, because apparently Krakens are native to North Blue, and Surame was brought into the Grand Line by the new Fishman pirates. Despite their size and reputation, Krakens are actually quite friendly and docile. And the reason why Surame was so aggressive is because Hody had kidnapped his Kraken family and was forcing him to obey them. Specifically, Hody kidnapped Surame's brother, which is something that Luffy immediately identified with, having two older brothers himself. And Surame is not the only gargantuan sea creature that Luffy has made friends with, or more accurately, a rival in the form of Laboon, an island whale which on average grow to a height of 400 meters, making them by far the largest species of whale in One Piece. So massive that they actually contain other giant sea monsters inside them. When the Straw Hats were swallowed by Laboon, they encountered a great king squid, quite fearsome in its own right, but nothing compared to island whales. We also have a detailed diagram of Laboon, whose body contains a very complex series of tunnels and various mechanics installed, assumedly by Crocus, as a way of saving people who Laboon decides to eat out of sheer annoyance. And they're also extremely intelligent, but at the same time extremely dangerous because they mostly travel in pods. So a lot of the damage they cause is collateral, because when you've got a large group of 400-meter whales roaming the seas, it's just not going to end well for anything in their path. So all of this is probably making you think that it's just better to stay put on an island. Well, you're not safe there either. This is the Island Eater. 715 meters of height unit with 120 tons of weight, and as its name implies, it is literally large enough to consume islands. However, as a side effect of its digestive system, it also creates islands. In fact, there is one island in the series confirmed to exist exactly through this mechanism. Its name is Nanimonai Island, and it was crafted from the remains of another island that had been excreted by the Island Eater. Nanimonai Island was so big that even the giants Dory and Broggy mistook it for an actual island and landed on it. And I think this also goes to show the unbelievable power of the giants who were able to dismiss the Island Eater in one blow. Oh, and there's a common misconception. The Island Eater is often mistaken for a Sea King, even by me, but they definitely belong in a whole different category of their own. Sea Kings are the true big boys of the world. On average, they're approximately 5,000 meters long and various widths, with almost nothing in this world being larger than them. Emphasis on the word almost. Sea Kings are so fearsome that 2 entire stretches of water are practically unsaleable because that's where they mostly live. These are the calm belt stretches that sandwich the Grand Line. And groups of Sea Kings are so devastating that together they form the power of a literal ancient weapon. The ability of the ancient weapon Poseidon is to command the Sea Kings, thus implying that they are capable of unparalleled and devastating destruction. However, they do have a weakness. For example, the Yuta from Amazon Lily contain a special poison that makes them much less tasty for a Sea King, and also allegedly Bananawani, the banana gators, are natural predators of Sea Kings, despite being absolutely minuscule compared to them. The other notable thing about Sea Kings is that they are exceptionally intelligent and can communicate with each other much like how humans can. And this communication can even be understood by those who can hear the voice of all things. And from what we've heard so far, Sea Kings are intrinsically tied to the mystery of the Void Century and Joy Boy. In fact, Sea Kings at this point know more about the Void Century than almost any human, bar say Silver's Rayleigh, and they are almost certainly old enough to have lived during the Void Century itself. As a side note, Sea Kings do have smaller, more sleek versions that roam around the lesser seas, such as the Lord of the Coast, who is the smallest known Sea King to date, but most of them are the colossal versions. But even then, there are still bigger things that you can can encounter in this world, which will be known to those who sail around the area of Gyre Island, as it is quite common to see monstrously large shadow creatures. Now, as readers and watchers, we know that these shadows are cast by the Shandian tribe members of Skypiea. However, if you're just an average person in this world, then seeing these would be one of the most terror-inducing sights. A series of giant silhouettes, impossible to quantify in terms of size or power. If I saw something like this, then I would never set out to sea again. And yes, we know that these particular shadows are harmless, but some of them are definitely not that. One of, if not the largest sea-based entity in One Piece, is the mysterious creature that inhabits the Florian Triangle. A creature we know nothing about, except that it's implied to be responsible for the disappearances of ships in this area long before Gecko Moria decided to make this space his home. Now, physically, it bears some resemblance to certain Japanese umibozu, which are mythological sea monsters said to drown very unfortunate sailors. And it has, at the very least, two sinister red eyes that can pierce the thick fog that has kept the creature masked from the world for, well, I don't know, quite possibly as long as it's lived, which could be hundreds, if not thousands of years. All we know right now is that this creature is completely unique and unlike anything we've seen or will see in the future. I mean, its sheer size is just insane. It makes Thriller Bark, which is literally a whole island, look tiny, look like nothing compared to it. But even that thing I just said is not the largest sea monster in this world. The largest sea creature is in fact an elephant. Zunesha is a Naitami Enorida elephant who is over 1,000 years old and dwarfs every single creature on this planet. Every creature, not just sea creatures. Zunesha stands at a mind-blowing 35 kilometers tall, which means that it is the only living thing tall enough to both touch the sea floor and be able to exist in the white sea far, far above. And it's also big enough that it carries an entire civilization on its back. Zunesha is also very smart and can communicate in a manner similar to that of sea kings. And also, Zunesha is subject to a big in-world controversy. 800 years ago, Zunesha allegedly committed a crime and was sentenced to walk the seas for all eternity. And recently, Zunesha claimed to have been a comrade of the legendary Joy Boy and was the one who confirmed to us that Luffy had inherited the will and powers of Joy Boy upon the emergence of Gear 5th. And so Zunesha is the biggest boy that One Piece has to offer. And let me know in the comments, what crime do you think this elephant committed?